So we're gonna finish up chapter 14 this week. It's gonna be all chapter 14 to finish the second half. Before we get into it, I want to talk a little bit about next week's exam. So exam 2 is gonna be on Wednesday, October 22nd, in lab time, same format, same feel as exam 1 was. It's just gonna be over different material later in the semester. You're gonna have full 2 hours. You should bring calculator. There's a periodic table and useful information that'll be provided with the test. Take a look in the exam 2 folder on Blackboard formulas. The formulas, the tables are going to be more tables this time with the acid base or the acid dissociation constants, more reference information, periodic table, and all the equations associated with acid bases as well. Though there's not, I guess, a ton of them. It's a lot of equilibrium setting up stuff. The test is going to cover chapters 13 and 14. So the focus really is on chapters 13 and 14. That's the equilibrium material and the acid and base material. There are overlaps from chapters 10, 11, and 12. Like kinetics plays into like the definition of equilibrium, and molarity as like a concentration unit from chapter 11 is still here, and like what ions do in solution, right? Ion salts dissolve in solution. We'll talk about that today in this set of videos. And so those concepts, I like expect you to still know them, but I'm not going to be asking you questions like what are the intermolecular forces of some compound, or like what is the half-life of this thing. But ideas from chapters 10, 11, 12 that we've explicitly talked about again in chapters 13 and 14, I do expect you to know. But I'm not going to ask you questions that are like only deep into the 10, 11, 12 material. Everything's going to be tied to the chapters 13 and 14. So there's a review in the exam 2 folder. You can get the 3 points on your test just like we did on the first exam. I encourage you to do that. If you did on the first test, hopefully you found it useful. And so I encourage everyone to do that. It's a guaranteed way to improve your score. The format is going to look the same as the other tests, the first test, in terms of like, explain your answer, show your work. When you're explaining your answer, you do want to be mindful. Explain your answer. Explain how you know does not mean redefine something. How do you know that vaporization, or why is vaporization endothermic? Well, it's endothermic because it takes heat from the surrounding. No, that's just defining endothermic. Evaporation or vaporization is endothermic because you need heat to break intermolecular forces, right? That's what it is. So the why is not redefining a term. Is this thing reactant favored? Yes, because there's more reactants. No, I wanted you to tell me how you know it's reactant favored. Is this thing an acid? Yes, because it increases or decreases pH. No, that's just the definition of an acid. You know it's an acid because it has hydrogens in it or something like that, right? So not what experimental result or definition would tell you. Now, conversely, if like you're looking at experimental data and the pH went down, that would be how you know that something is an acid. But I'm not just asking you on the test to define things. In terms of preparation, I really encourage you to do the review. If you do the review or you work practice problems, I encourage you to set it up like kind of like a simulation of a test. Just sit down and do what you can without looking at your notes. Use the calculator you're going to use on the test. That way you're more replicating the test and you're struggling with it potentially, right? You're trying to do problems you don't necessarily know how to do, and getting into that like discomfort, getting into that like I don't know how to do this, and working through it is how you're going to learn. Now, you don't want to like set yourself up for total failure. Like you can like study before you do the review. Study some, review things, then try to do the review, and don't, burn yourself totally out, but spend a little bit of time on problems, see which ones you can do, see which ones you can, and if you then use your notes, then try to see if you can answer the questions out. Then come to me. I'm always happy to help. Met with some of y'all before the first test. Hopefully you found that useful, right? Those ideas kind of getting set up, getting things figured out. If you do ever want to meet, I'm always happy to do it. Chatting about this is always, I think, a great way. Doing the review and then we can talk about where the mistakes were is a great way to prepare. But we still got week 8 first. Don't forget the week 8 material. This will all be on the test. Participation 1014 is what we're looking at here. Getting into the videos, learning more about acids and bases and the wonderful things they can do.